All right. Hello and welcome, everybody. This is our Tea with Tim, where we're going to be discussing three topics, which is listening, persuasion, and influence. So, as always, with these Teas with Tim, this is an opportunity for all of you to actually share and give feedback. What I'm going to do is I'm going to be showing you some videos, and then I want to get your thoughts, and I'll be either sharing some of my own experiences, and hopefully you can get some insight. And so the purpose is that you walk away from this training with improved listening skills, improved skills to persuade others and influence others. So again, as I mentioned before, I find these videos doesn't necessarily agree with all of the different speakers or their different philosophies, and we should always respect each other, especially people who disagree with us, that we should listen to what they have to say and see if there's anything that we can gain value from it. And that's actually going to be a very important topic for today's training. So the best way that wanted to start is I wanted to start with a funny video, actually. So if you have ever seen The Big Bang Theory, I'm going to show a clip. And this actually talks about active listening, and then we can discuss. So let me pull it up right now.
First, there was PlayStation, aka PS1. Then there's PS2.
All right, here we go.
PS3, and now PS4. And that makes sense. You'd think after Xbox, there'd be Xbox 2. But no. Next came Xbox 360. And now, after 360, comes Xbox One. Why one? Maybe that's how many seconds of thought they put into naming it.
Can you get the butter, please?
However, with the Xbox One, I can control my entire entertainment system using voice commands. Up until now, I've had to use Leonard.
Then get the other one. Pass the butter.
Hang on. I don't feel like you're taking this dilemma seriously.
Fine, Sheldon. You have my undivided attention.
Okay, now, the PS4 is more angular and sleek looking.
No way!
It's true, but the larger size of the Xbox One may keep it from overheating.
You wouldn't want your gaming system to overheat?
No, see, you absolutely would not. And furthermore, the Xbox One now comes with a Kinect included.
Included?
Yes. Not sold separately. Although the PS4 uses cool new GDDR5 RAM, while the Xbox One is still using the conventional DDR3 memory.
Why would they still be using DDR3? Are they nuts?
See, that's what I thought. But then they go and throw in an ES RAM buffer.
Oh, wait a second. Who's they?
Xbox.
You're kidding!
No, I am not. And this ES RAM buffer should totally bridge the 100 gigabit per second bandwidth gap between the two RAM types.
This is a nightmare. How will you ever make a decision?
See, I don't know. What should I do?
Please pass the butter!
Oh my goodness. I laugh every time. I hope that you guys enjoyed that. So I'm just going to bring it back to, the discussion. So what did anybody get from watching that actual video? First of all, Shania, I appreciate your laughing emojis. Why don't we start off with you? Besides being funny, in terms of the communication, what insights did you get?
From that, I kind of that's actually funny because that's how I am with my friends sometimes. But what I saw is that she basically like pretended to like actively listen to him, when because you could tell she was being sarcastic, like, oh my God, that's so funny. But yeah, she was being sarcastic, but overall she just wanted the butter at the end. So it was like she tried to, be that like try to be active because I guess to make sure he feels good about himself. And as the video went on, you could tell he was feeling good because like she was reacting and he was like, excited and like, oh my God, yeah. So it was like he was feeding off of her, but at the end she was just like wanted the butter. So well, it was like, yeah.
Absolutely. But, and that's what made it so hilarious, right? She just wanted the freaking butter, but he actually wasn't even listening to her, right? But he wanted that undivided attention. So to me, one of the insights that I wanted to share with that video is, again, it's done in a humorous way, but how many times do all of you actually take the time to when you're actually listening to somebody, give them your undivided attention and actually be engaged. I know that I have done it myself where I'm with my wife or I'm doing something and she's talking about something, and then suddenly either I'm daydreaming or it might be not interesting to me. So I go, whatever. And what I always have shared with all of you is that the biggest gift that you can give to anybody is to actually listen to them. Right. And this is about, to, instead of actually just listening to them, why don't you actually practice a different level of listening, of actually active listening and versus passive listening, where you're actually interacting like, oh, is that what it is? Oh, like, what do you actually mean by that? What is this? And so it's almost like you become like a humble child trying to be very curious about what they say. So, I see what you also say. I'm trying to get better at it. It was worse before. So yeah, absolutely. So again, this is something, even though sarcastic, we can all learn from. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to share another video, and this one is a little bit more serious, but it is going to actually explain this kind of principle of listening. Now, there may be people here, and I just want to address the elephant in the room. I'm going to be showing a video of Jordan Peterson. Now, for those of you who know Jordan Peterson, he's actually kind of a bit of a controversial figure in terms of YouTube. Some people really like him, some people really hate him. And, what I actually am bringing to this video and why I wanted to share it is because he has had 30 years of experience or more as a clinical psychologist. So that means he actually listening to people and helping them with their problems of whatever that they're working on. So that's why I'm actually showing this video. And I have to tell you guys all a very interesting story. So at one point I had shared this video and asked for feedback. And I really got a lot of negative feedback, especially because there were some members of Electus that are part of the LGBTQ community and dislike, Jordan Peterson's political stance on different kind of issues. And I actually reached out to the student and I asked him, like, could we speak? Because he was very upset that I would even share a video from him. And so I called him up, I scheduled a meeting with him. So I said, I really like to talk to you about your feedback because of what you share with me. And I said, okay, so it's very clear you don't like Jordan Peterson. And I always say that I don't always share the views and opinions of all these different speakers. And what, did you actually watch the video? Did you actually listen to what he was actually saying? And his response was, no. Once I actually found out it was him, I just skimmed it and I stopped listening. And I said, this is actually what we are talking about with Electus Society, is because he's actually trying to help teach you something about listening, and your emotional reactions were so strong that you couldn't actually even listen to what he was actually trying to say. So it's actually a further demonstration of why this is needed so much, to actually listen. And I told him, I said, listen, you don't have to agree with him. I actually have other videos that I'm going to show later on that can actually be very critical of Jordan Peterson and the way he communicates. But so I don't want you to think that I'm like taking sides or anything like that. But let me ask you a question. What type of leader silences people with those people that disagree with him? And he stayed quiet and he didn't really have an answer. He's like, I don't know. It's like, I said, it's a dictator, because if you're afraid, or you don't want something that you don't like and you silence people just because, then that's the type of leadership. It's about command, control, silence, and what I actually shared with all of you before in some of the earlier training, because I remember it, is that, even if you have somebody that you don't like, and you're like, that person shouldn't have a platform to spew that hate and things like that. Well, guess what happens? The reason why the founders wanted freedom of speech because it's just an easy sign for tyranny to actually silence people. And what ends up happening is, if you keep trying to silence people, what ends up happening? They go underground. And so now they're actually communicating and talking with other people, instilling these ideas. But because you've silenced it, it's like bacteria and virus and mold, where it's like a cold, wet environment and there's no sunshine. So the sunshine is the truth. The moment that people actually speak up and hear the ideas, now you can interact with them, now you can talk with them, now you can agree or disagree with them, and then you can actually say, well, does that argument have any merit? And so then you can put to rest different ideas that either don't make sense or things like that. And so that's what I was trying to communicate to him. And I even gave this student a challenge. I said, well, and if you don't like this video and you don't like him, could you at least recommend some other video that covers the same content that you would find just as valuable, that I would replace with him? Because again, I'm not here to cause controversy, but I really just want to help, members with this idea of actual listening. And he's like, sure, I'll maybe I can come up with something. What ended up happening is, that student never decided to continue with Electa Society, and he just kind of fell off the map. So again, I just wanted to share that story because it's very important. And part of the chat on Telegram, because I didn't have time to include in this video, it's a video that Joe Rogan did interviewing a Black man who was able to effectively communicate with KKK members and get them to switch from being KK members to leaving the organization. And I'm going to tell you a little sneak peek. He practiced these principles that we were going to talk right here. So I'm going to post it in the chat, so that as an extra video for you all to watch. So let's watch this video. It's a little bit like they put some music to it, so try to be very motivational, but let's cover the content, and I want to hear what your all thoughts are. Okay.
We're having a conversation. I'm deciding I'm going to listen to you, right? That's different than how people generally communicate, because usually when they communicate, they're doing something like, okay, we're going to have a conversation and I'm going to tell you why I'm right and I'll win if you agree. Or maybe you're having a conversation where, I don't know what you're trying to do. Maybe you're trying to impress the person you're talking to. So you're not listening to them at all. You're just thinking about what you're going to say next. Okay, so that's not this. This is, you might have something to tell me. And so I'm going to listen on the off chance that you'll tell me something that would really be useful for me to know. And so you could think about it as an extension of the Piagetian. Piaget talked about the fundamentally important element of knowledge being to describe how knowledge is sought, the process by which knowledge is generated. Well, if you agree with me and I find that out, I know nothing more than I knew before. I just know what I knew before. And maybe I'm happy about that because, it didn't get challenged. But I'm no smarter than I was before. But maybe you're different than me. And so while I'm listening to you, you'll tell me something I don't like. Maybe it's something I find contemptible or difficult, whatever. Maybe you'll tell me something I don't know, and then I won't be quite as stupid. And then maybe I won't run painfully into quite as many things. And that's a really useful thing to know, especially if you live with someone and you're trying to make long-term peace with them, is they're not the same as you. And their way they look at the world and the facts that they pull out of the world aren't the same as your facts. And even though you're going to be overwhelmed with the proclivity to demonstrate that you're right, it is the case that two brains are better than one. And so maybe 9 of the 10 things they tell you are dispensable, or maybe even 49 out of 50, but one thing, all you need to get out of the damn conversation is one thing you don't know. And one of the things that's very cool about a good psychotherapeutic session is that the whole conversation is like that. All you're doing is trying to express the truth of the situation as clearly as possible. That's it. And so now Roger's proposition, and I'll tell you why he derived it, was that if you have a conversation like that with someone, it will make both of you better. It'll make both of you psychologically healthier. So there's an implicit presupposition that the exchange of truth is curative. Well, that's a very cool idea. I mean, it's a very deep idea. I think it's the most profound idea. It's the idea upon which Western civilization, although not only Western civilization, is actually predicated. the idea that truth produces health. But for Rogers, that was the entire purpose of the Psychotherapeutic Alliance. You come to see me because you want to be better. You don't even know what that means necessarily, neither do I. We're going to figure that out together. But you come and you say, look, things are not acceptable to me, and maybe there's something I could do about that. So that's the minimal precondition to engage in therapy. Something's wrong, you're willing to talk about it truthfully, and you want it to be better. Without that, the therapeutic relationship does not get off the ground. And so then you might ask, well, what relationships are therapeutic? And the answer to that would be, if you have a real relationship, it's therapeutic. If it isn't, what you have is not a relationship. God only knows what you have. You're a slave, they're a tyrant, you know, you're both butting heads with one another. It's a primate dominance hierarchy dispute. Oh, I don't know, you're like two cats in a barrel or two people with their hands around each other's throats. But what you have is not a relationship. So, all right. We may say that the greater the communicated congruence of experience, awareness, and behavior on the part of one individual, that's a reference to the same idea that I was describing with regards to Jung. So let's say you come and talk to me and you want things to go well. Well, I'm going to have to more or less be one thing, because if I'm all over the place, you can't trust any continuity in what I say. There's no reason for you to believe that I'm capable of actually telling you, I'm capable of expressing anything that's true. So the truth is something that emerges as a consequence of getting yourself lined up and beating all the, what would you call, all the impurities out of your soul, for lack of a better word. You have to be integrated for that to happen. And you do that at least in part by wanting to tell the truth. The more the ensuing relationship will involve a tendency towards reciprocal communication with the same qualities. So one of the things, I've been quite influenced by Rogers. One of the things I try to do in my therapeutic sessions is, first of all, to listen, to really listen. And then while I listen, I watch. And while I'm listening, things will happen in my head. You know, maybe I'll get a little image of something, or I'll get a thought or a question will emerge, and then I'll just tell the person what that is. But it's sort of directionless, you know, it's not like I have a goal, except that we're trying to make things better. I'm on the side of the person, I'm on the side of the part of the person that wants things to be better, not worse. And so then those parts of us have a dialogue, and the consequence of that dialogue is that certain things take place, and then I'll just tell the person what happened. And it isn't that I'm right. That's not the point. The point is that they get to have an hour where someone actually tells them what they think. Here's the impact you're having on me. You know, this is making me angry. This is making me happy. This is really interesting. This reminds me of something that you said an hour ago that I don't quite understand. And the whole point is not for either person to make the proposition or convince the other that their position is correct, but merely to have an exchange of experience about how things are set up. And it's extraordinarily useful for people, because it's often difficult for anyone to find anyone to talk to that will actually listen. And so another thing that's really strange about this listening is that if you listen to people, they will tell you the weirdest bloody things so fast, you just cannot believe it. So if you're having a conversation with someone and it's dull, it's because you're stupid. That's why. You're not listening to them properly, because they're weird. They're like wombats or albatrosses or rhinoceroses or something. Like, they're strange creatures. And so if you were actually communicating with them and they were telling you how weird they really are, it would be anything but boring. So, and you can ask questions. That's a really good way of listening. But, you know, one of Roger's points is, well, you have to be oriented properly in order to listen. And the orientation has to be, look, what I want out of this conversation is that the place we both end up is better than the place we left. That's it. That's what I'm after. And if you're not after that, you've got to think, why the hell wouldn't you be after that? What could you possibly be after that would be better than that? You walk away smarter and more well-equipped for the world than you were before you had the conversation. And so does the other person. Well, maybe if you're bitter and resentful and angry and anxious and, you know, generally annoyed at the world, then that isn't what you want. You want the other person to walk away worse, and you too, because you're full of revenge. But, you know, you'll get what you want if you do that. So we know from our research that such empathic understanding, it's already defined that. I want to hear you. I want to hear what you have to say so we can clarify it. and move forward. I want to have your best interests in mind, and mine as well, but both at the same time. Your families too, if we can manage that. We're after making things better. We know from our research that such empathic understanding with a person, not about him, is such an effective approach that it can bring about major changes in personality. Some of you may be feeling that you listen well to people and that you have never seen such results. The chances are very great that you have not been listening in the manner that I've described. Fortunately, I can suggest a little experiment that you can do to test the quality of your understanding. The next time you get into an argument with your wife or your friend or a small group of friends, stop the discussion for a moment and, for an experiment, institute this rule. Each person can speak up for himself only after he has first restated the ideas and feelings of the previous speaker accurately. What accurately means is they have to agree with your restatement. Now, that's an annoying thing to do, because if someone is talking to you and you disagree with them, the first thing you want to do is take their argument, make the stupidest possible thing out of it that you can. That's the straw man, and then demolish it. It's like, so then you can walk away feeling good about it, and you primate dominated them really nicely. So, but that isn't what you do. You say, okay, well, I'm going to take what you told me, and maybe I'm even going to make your argument stronger than the one you made. That's useful if you're dealing with someone that you have to live with, because maybe they can't bloody well express themselves very well, but they have something to say. So you make their argument strong. All right, then you see what this would mean. It would mean that before presenting your own point of view, it would be necessary for you to really achieve the other speaker's frame of reference, to understand his thoughts and feelings so well that you could summarize them for him. Sounds simple, doesn't it? But if you'll try it, you'll find that it's the most difficult thing that you've ever done. Okay, good. We'll leave it at that, and then we'll see you on Tuesday.
Wow. So there was a lot in there. So why don't we start with you, Princess, and anyone feel free to raise their hand if they want to comment on that video. Princess, what did you actually get out of watching that video?
Hi everyone. I think that was a very interesting video. Because at one point he talked about having a therapeutic relationship, and I am a nursing student, and that's literally the basic and the foundations of what they're teaching, of how to communicate with a patient, like literally listening to what they need. Yeah. And it's a relationship where you can have the other person express themselves and have them actually listen to you as well. So you can meet in the middle and come up with ideas to how to make a situation better or their health better. And I think I love that. I love that video. If you have like a link that I could I can rewatch it and share it with friends, that would be really great.
Absolutely. So when we're done with this whole training, I'll post it now for you, but this is the Google Forms that I want you, after you finish this Tea with Tim, we're going to get credit for watching and interacting for this, and also those people who are recording it. I'll also post it again at the end. I include all the links as well as summaries, because again, I feel bad that we only have an hour and a half, that I'm actually giving you a fire hose of information, because I want you to have so much information that to go into that it takes so much. There was so much content in there. How can you can't drink that much water, right, with a fire hose in your face. But I love everything that you shared, especially about nursing. I mean, how many times when you just said that, I could thought of some patient in their bed, angry or sad or frustrated. They're like, no, sir, we need to give you this medicine. And it's now they're getting new nurses, somebody hold them down or whatever it needs to happen. But what was missing from this whole situation is, sir, I actually hear you. I see. What's going on? Are you in pain? Yes, my leg hurts. Which part of your leg? This whole leg. All right. Is there anything else? Yes, there's a breeze coming in. All right. So your leg hurts and the breeze is coming in. Is there anything else? Yeah, I'm thirsty. Okay, I get it. Your leg hurts. It's breezy, and like, you don't know how deep the well goes. And so what I always say is, deep out of that well, and then people can actually be in a place to actually listen. And if I told you the story again it's worth repeating. I would always have some conflict in the past with my wife, and when we were talking about stuff, and she didn't like her job. They were working her very, very late hours in the vet tech field. There was always emergencies. So I was the typical guy in the relationship trying to solve her problems. Well, why don't you get a new job? Why don't you go apply here? And and so she would almost like like karate block all my suggestions. And then and it was really frustrating because I just wanted to make her happy. I wanted to help her. I took a communication course, and this was at Landmark Worldwide, which is that personal and professional development course that I may have mentioned before. And I did their 2-day. Actually, they have 4 days, 2 days, they're communication level 1, and then another 2-day conference is their communication level 2. And they basically practice this idea. They called it something differently. Jordan Peterson called it listening with an experiment. And basically summarizing it, for Landmark, they called it recreation. Can I totally understand what the person is trying to communicate to me, but even understanding them so completely that even though they haven't said it, I really hear them and I get them? And so I was driving, back home from the train, and my wife was in the passenger seat. And what ended up happening is she was complaining about her job again. So I decided to use this technique, right? Listen to her. Okay, I understand what's going on. Oh my goodness. I was practicing some active listening too, right?
Right.
From what we watched in that Big Bang Theory. And I'm like, is there anything else? Yes. And this, and I am frustrated. And I said, okay, no, I totally understand that. Like, anything more? And then she just kept going. I didn't know how deep this well really went. And then finally we were in front of the house, and I said, "Oh, no, I completely understand that. What else?" And she's like, "No, that's it." And at that moment, what I want to teach all of you was, at that moment is when that person is probably the most receptive to actually have a conversation and listen to what you have to say. You mean seek first to understand and then be understood? And my ego, it wasn't want to say, now you can convince her, tell her what she needs to do. But my higher self said, no, no, don't say anything. Just get her complete communication without any agenda. So I said, I got it. Let's go upstairs. She had nothing else she wanted to say. I go inside 5 minutes later, and she said this to me. She says, Tim, do you know that the first time in all of our years together in our relationship, that was the first time I feel like you actually, truly, really listened to me. And I was like, wow, like this stuff really works. And later on, I was able to help with her because now she needed support. I helped her apply for some different jobs, and using some of the techniques that I'm going to teach all of you about secrets to getting your dream job or internship later on in this program. And yeah, she was able to get that job and is very, very happy. So it's a very, very happy story. But what if I could impart on all of you this idea? This is a superpower. And I want you to actually implement it and develop it. So I love to get some more comments and feedbacks on this, but maybe you guys can just put in the chat, because there's some other videos that I want to share with you, and I want to make sure. Actually, no, we have some time. All right, is there anybody else who'd like to comment on that video that we watched, or what else they learned from about listening and communicating? I may call. How about you, Justin? What are your thoughts based on seeing that video?
So what I learned from watching the video and also listening to your side of it is active part of listening is also to let the person who you're listening to know that you're actively listening. So for example, if they said that today the weather was hot, you can kind of like repeat that sentence back to them, like what they just told you, but in a different way. So
Yeah.
that way they would get the sense of, oh, okay, so great, he got that, he's listening, you know. So and
And
also
go
yeah,
ahead.
no, that's it.
Well, here's what I wanted to share with you. It's actually okay to use the exact words that they said. So for example, oh my goodness, it is really hot. I do sense that. Now, what ends up happening is sometimes if you say, oh, it is rather warm, he's like, no, I didn't say warm. This is not warm. This is really hot. This is scorching hot, you know? And so, that's what it's okay to repeat exactly what people say. Now, I met a lot of different managers. Some of them were dominants, like I told you in my training, high performance communication. And so those can be really tough managers because they just want to direct and dominate and stuff like that, especially under high stress. Like, you do what I say, time is money, all this other kind of stuff. But I was known as a very effective communicator. And I had this one manager that was really frustrated with me because she was all about get it done, and I would actually repeat back to her what she was saying, and I would just repeat it back. So here's what because when someone says something and they say a bunch of different stuff, chances are you didn't catch all of it. And especially if they're making a very important point and it's very complicated. So I would actually repeat it back. So here, and just summarize it. So this is what I hear that you're communicating. Is this correct? Yes, that's actually what I am communicating. Okay. And then, like I said, I use that technique is there anything more? Now, what you said, Justin, kind of reminds me of something else that happened in the video, which is when somebody communicates something, like you're saying, that person was saying it was really, really hot. What if they were saying it's an inferno over here, I'm burning, or someone says I'm literally burning. They're not literally burning, right? But they're just so expressive and they're just trying to communicate with so hot. There are some people that will say, are you really burning? Is that what you really mean? And would kind of like make fun of them and poke them. And I've actually I have people in my life that are exactly do that. Those are the highly conscientious people that want to make sure that everything that you say is accurate and want to agree or disagree with you. No, it is not that hot, or whatever it may be. So the thing that I really liked in that Jordan Peterson video, when he said, can you actually listen to somebody who actually is not as effective as communicating as you? Because I have to admit, I am a teacher. I love education. I love everything that we're doing. It's just part of my passion. And I'm also very expressive. I get excited very easily. And so I will use words that could be a little bit exaggerating and things like that. And I've had friends that constantly, one friend in particular, that says, no, that's not what you mean, Tim. And he will constantly correct me and karate chop me. And guess what? When he does that, he's right, but at the same time, I feel like attacked. And while other people may say, hey, you know what, why do you even hang around with that friend anymore? He's constantly correcting you and stuff like that. I actually believe that it's like weightlifting, right? It's exercise. It's painful, but I actually think that he's actually trying to make me more articulate and more precise, which I think is another form of superpower. If you talk about listening is one superpower, being able to communicate and be very accurate with your words is a second superpower. So I don't mind it, because to me, it's like a punching bag and I'm getting stronger and stronger. But what Jordan Peterson said is, if that person is not very good at effectively communicating, try to understand what they were trying to say. And then if you're a very conscientious and accurate person, why don't you summarize it back and actually say, what I really think that you mean to say is this, that it is really extremely hot and we're all sweating and, it almost feels like you're near a fire. Is that right? And you're like, yes, that's exactly what I was trying to say, as opposed to constantly nitpicking and say, you're right, you're wrong. Notice that people do that. So no, thanks so much for bringing that up, Justin. I want to keep going. If you, I have a question. How do you know if someone wants an ear or an advice? Well, I have to be guilty of this. It's a great question, Justin, because when I'm a manager, right, and I'm managing people, I'm in work mode. So I'm here to solve problems and things like that. And I remember getting a feedback from one of the employees, because I'm always constantly getting feedback. Is there anything that I could do to improve? And I remember interviewing this one person, and one of my coworkers, she's like, Tim, anytime we complain to you, I actually, you're always trying to fix the problems instead of listening. And so sometimes we don't want to actually share with you information or what's going on because we don't want to hear it. And so I heard that, I'm like, wow, that is very interesting. Because at one point I was like, you know what, maybe there's a lesson to be learned. Maybe I need to listen more, right? And instead of always giving out solutions. And then number two is, I also am not interested in really complaining and whining and gossiping if people don't want to actually do anything about it. So I'll tell you what I do now. When I was working with my team, I would always just listen. And sometimes I would get in the mode and where I would say, are we just venting? Because if you want to vent, I'm here. But if you, and I always tell them, like, put up the V sign for me so that I know. And a couple of them, hey, I'm just venting here, because sometimes people just needed to get off some steam. Eventually, I don't think you need to tell them to do that. I think you should just allow people to vent. And like I said before, in that situation with my wife, allow to vent here. And so you've done your job. If you've given your ear, Justin, wash your hands, you're complete. Now, if you have the motivation or desire, because you can actually think you can help them or have something that could be beneficial, then I would do this. And this is what I call the bottle cap method. Most people don't want to hear advice from other people, right? They want to learn it from their own. And so what I would always do is, if I like I said, I listen to my higher self. Should I really say this? Does this person really want to, do they need the help? Right. And what I would do is then I ask them permission. Hey, I have something that I think that can help you. Are you interested in sharing, in some advice or some feedback about that? And so guess what? Once you ask that question, they get to decide. So you're going to get this response. They're going to like, no, I'm good. I know what I need to do. Right. You just saved how many minutes of your life from like trying to have a conversation if it wasn't going everywhere. But if they say yes, what you've done is, instead of pouring advice on a bottle with a cap on it that they wouldn't listen, you asking that question is giving them permission to open up the top of that bottle cap. And so now you can pour the water inside that bottle and they can actually retain it. And so they are more receptive. And then the other response you could get is, okay, fine, tell me, where it's almost like they don't really want to listen, but they feel out of social norms and culture that I have to basically, not to be rude, I have to listen to you, even though you're going to have to say, my sister-in-law did that to me one time, and she's like, fine, tell me. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to tell you if you don't really want to hear my feedback. And at that moment, it was challenging to her. And she's like, okay, I do want to hear. And then the last point that I will actually say is this. I have learned recently that sometimes, many times, let's just put it this way, giving advice doesn't work. Because nobody, like I said, nobody wants to be told what they need to do. The most powerful way that I have seen, and I do this in my coaching sessions when I'm coaching high-level executives or different people, is I say, can I share with you a story? Can I share something that happened in my life? And so I'm not telling them exactly what they need to do, but I tell them a story of something happening to me because I want them to learn something from what I did. And then once I finish sharing it, I ask them this question. So what did you get from my sharing that story? And then, oftentimes they'll get it. Oh, I see. You are trying to tell me, I need to do this. I need to do that. I need to do that. But guess what? They allowed themselves to come to it, And then on some occasions, maybe they're missing it. I would say, no, this is the thing that I'm trying to point out to, right? If they needed some guidance. But the other thing that I learned recently, which I've been working on, because again, I want to teach, I want to give advice and stuff like that, is don't give advice because people know what they need to do, right? So it's like the only person that really has the answer is themselves. Like psychotherapy is all about, and coaching is not really about you giving your answers. It's about them discovering it for themselves. In other words, I believe each person has a higher self that they could ask, to guidance to get them what they want. And guess what? What if they're not very good at listening to that higher self? Maybe they don't practice the meditation or whatever it is, and they have an inner impulse that it's telling them, do this. And you're like, oh my God, do you know that's going to be a terrible thing that you're going to do? That's going to have consequences. Well, guess what? I'm telling you my own personal belief, right? Is that sometimes people learn from others people's mistakes, and sometimes they don't, and they just need to learn from their own mistakes. And so I've just kind of zoomed back and said to myself, everybody is a child of God. Everybody has their own free will. They're living their own life, and guess what? They're on their own karmic journey, and that there are lessons that they need to learn. And if they need help and guidance, they'll come to me, they'll ask me. If not, you know what? That's what they need to do. And I'm telling you, if you practice that idea of saying, you know what? This is meant to be. There's something in that person that they need to discover. Like, the only extreme would be like raising a child and they're going to run off a cliff. I would probably intervene, but I do want to create comfortable environments where people need to fail because they have lessons to learn. So once I really understood that people have free will, respect people and individual in their situations, I think it's given me a lot of freedom and respect and understanding. So Justin, I didn't think you were gonna expect all that from your response, but let me ask you, what are you getting from what I'm sharing with you, just to complete it?
So basically, from what I've guarded, it's always good to ask them beforehand, and this way that you both know how to invest and how to go forward.
Yep.
Rather than just overflowing information, and then because at the same time you don't want to make the person uncomfortable in such a way that you want them to go to you, but you don't always want to have something to say. So a good way to do it is through getting like how do you say it, a compromise, I guess you can call it, like, or you would ask for permission. That's the word.
Yeah, to me, that's it. But I would ask you to do something first before that. Ask yourself, do they really want advice, or do they really want to vent? Right? Because there are some people that just really want to vent, and you're like, just think about it. Like, do they really want my advice? Do you think that they'll actually benefit or take action on it? If not, stay quiet, stay silent. Listen to them. I see that's a problem, right? But then if something deep inside you says, no, Justin, you offer them something, help them, then yes, ask them permission to share something. And hey, can I share something with you that I think that could be helpful? Look at that. You're now giving a lifeline to them. You're not saying advice is could be very patronizing. Like, let me tell you how you need to live your life. All right. You ready for some advice, some hard truth? They're like, who the hell are you, Justin, to tell me? Right. It's like, hey, can I share something that I think might be helpful for you? Sure. Well, here's my thoughts about this, or I had this experience, or what if you wanted to try doing XYZ? Like, ask it in the form of question. Have you thought about doing this? Then it's not, I have to take it or leave it. It's an inquiry, and we're going to watch another video that's going to talk a lot about Socratic method, and we're going to go over that. So I think, is that more helpful, Justin?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Okay, Princess, I see your hands raised. Let's hear it. What's your question?
Yes, no, it's not a question. I just want to share really quick.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, because I had the same experience in the hospital. And I was with a classmate, and we went to greet a patient for the day.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was so relevant when you said, because on my thinking was, because she started teaching the patient like right off the bat, not introducing herself, and not even checking her ID ban and whatever. And and the patient started saying, "Okay, mom." I was just laughing. I was looking at her, and I was like, "Oh, there you go, a lesson learned."
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Imagine how she would have been if she would have developed a relationship, been nice to them, listen to them, and say,
Yeah.
hey, now can I have do I have your permission? Can I share with you some of the things that I think can really help you? That patient would be like, sure, I'm ready, right? You know? So totally. I love that. Thanks for sharing that, Princess. Let's keep going because there's more videos that I want to share with you. I have two more. And I want to make sure that we have plenty of time. Hold on. Okay. So let me go to my screen. The next one is going to be about persuasion. So this is coming from a YouTube channel called Charisma on Command. And so they have these different videos and they give a lot of different tips, right? And this one really tackles Trevor Noah. It's 12 minutes long, but I think it's really worth it. And I hope that you guys enjoy
Sometimes
it.
arguments can get heated and spiral out of control.
Or how about the more than a billion people who aren't fanatical, who don't punch women, who just want to go to school?
Wait a second.
Sandwiches,
Wait a
break
second.
back to the don't do any of the things. They're saying all Muslims. Wait a second. Stereotyping.
And while we all want to win our arguments, not making an enemy in the process can be even more important, which is why today we're going to be looking at Trevor Noah and what you can learn from him about coming out of verbal scruffs, not only on top, but looking cool, calm, and collected. First off, Trevor has a simple but effective habit to prevent emotions from getting too heated. His sub-communications indicate that he isn't there for a fight. To see this principle in action, take a look at this exchange from his debate with Tommy Lahren and notice Trevor's tone of voice compared to Tommy's.
That's not fair and that's true.
No, it is fair, Trevor, because
that's
the
not-
shooter said, point blank shooter said he's doing this because of Black Lives Matter.
Yes, and there are many things you can say.
As people get more frustrated, they have a tendency to raise their voices and talk faster, like Tommy does here. In this case, both sides' ability to change their mind completely shuts down, and they dig into their positions to prepare for a verbal sparring match. You can tell that this is beginning to happen when both people rush to talk over one another, like here.
I saw people and race as chocolates.
I wouldn't use that.
I wouldn't use that.
I'm that color,
But
and
when
I
I
wouldn't
grew
say that.
In these sorts of situations, no matter how good your point is, it's not going to be well received. So the first order of business is simply to slow things down and indicate that fighting isn't necessary. So as Trevor gains control, you can see him deliberately pause in these situations, which reduces the tension and opens the other person up to his perspective.
That color, and I wouldn't say that.
Listen, when I grew up, I believed that all people were chocolates.
A very basic but tried and true method when this starts to happen to you is simply to take a deep breath as you are about to speak. It helps to slow things down tremendously. Now, another key element that indicates Trevor isn't looking to fight is his inflection. In last week's Harvey Specter breakdown, we talked about how a downward inflection can be a powerful tool when you're giving commands, and that may have given the impression that upward inflections are somehow bad. This is definitely not the case, though. In fact, upward inflections are excellent for de-escalating conflict because it reassures others that you're not commanding them or trying to control them, which is what gets most people upset in arguments in the first place.
Because you're the first person I've met who said this. I've seen this message online. I'm not labeling you as the bad person. I just want to know if you've ever thought of the how. That's all I want to know.
The last key piece you see from Trevor about sub-communicating that you're not there for a fight is simply the ability to crack a joke. It might seem counterintuitive to slow down the flow of debate with moments of levity, but this actually makes you more persuasive since you're sub-communicating that you are on the same side as someone when you can laugh with them. Now, there's obviously tons of ways to crack jokes, but it can be as simple as misinterpreting a word, like here.
And then I got closer to the campaign and I started seeing some of the things he was saying and I started seeing the effect he was having on people and the things that he was saying that was touching people and making them
He was
feel like
touching people.
Yeah, he was.
Or just about any argument, you can just poke fun at the fact that both sides typically want to demonize one another, like here.
And so you one of the good ones.
Cracking jokes like this will help release some of the tension that comes when you're debating fiercely held beliefs and hopefully move you towards a more constructive outcome. However, keep in mind that if you are going to make jokes, you need to also be willing to take a joke and to laugh at it, even when that joke targets your side, like here.
He's
So
really
partially crazy.
Well, hey, that works in Washington. You got Bernie.
This should give you a good base of sub-communications, but the literal words that you use are important too. And that's why the next point is that whenever possible, ask questions instead of making statements. The reason this is so significant is that questions tend to come across as less confrontational than statements, provided that they're not provocative, accusatory questions. Now, there's two general kinds of questions that Trevor uses. First, you see genuine questions aimed at better understanding the other person's viewpoint. Again, note the upward inflection in this next clip that indicates he's seriously curious.
And now I would like to know from your side, genuinely, as someone who's won, do you believe that Donald Trump will follow through on his promises?
The goal of these type of questions is to fully understand the opposing position. So many people get into debates with the straw man of the person that they're debating, assuming that they believe things that the Democrats believe, or Republicans believe, or Christians believe, or atheists believe, or whatever. You must recognize that you do not know any individual's beliefs simply by knowing one of their affiliations. You need to get to what they believe as an individual, and genuine questions are the only way there. To make sure that you're actually understanding someone correctly, a fantastic tool is to try to state back to them their own beliefs in your words, and to not proceed until they confirm that you've actually got it. You see this right here.
You're saying that populism, both on Trump's side and on the left, there's a danger of that hurting America's.
That's right. But look, there's nothing wrong with a little populism.
Keep in mind, though, it's not simply about using the words "so you're saying" and then putting words in the other person's mouth. We saw that in the Jordan Peterson, Kathy Newman debate, that you need to make a genuine, good faith attempt to rephrase the other's position, not like you see here.
You're saying that we should organize our societies along the lines of the lobsters.
Now, once you have a good grasp of someone's beliefs, you can begin to ask the second main type of question, questions that probe for inconsistencies in beliefs in a non-accusatory way. A very recent interview with the Republican Senator Rand Paul has a few great examples of this from Trevor.
If two people do a bad thing, does it cancel each other out then? I'm saying that most people go, look at what happened in Venezuela, socialism. Then I go, does the corruption not count at all? You know, credit default swaps, that's capitalism running rampant. That's people going, you can buy a thing that doesn't exist and nobody understands it and you don't have to regulate it. And then all of a sudden the markets crash, people lose their houses. Isn't that also capitalism?
This questioning style of conversation is known as the Socratic method. And it's the reason that Socrates is the most famous philosopher ever. So use it. It works incredibly well. In short, you're first attempting to understand people's positions as best you can, and then frame your disagreements in the form of questions. That gives the other person a chance to respond without feeling cornered, and it makes them much less likely to be offended. Moving on to the next point, let's have a look at what to do when the positions are reversed, and you're the one who is having your beliefs challenged, but let's say it's in a way that you feel is unfair. Your main goal here is to confidently defend yourself without coming across as antagonistic, and there is a surprisingly effective way to achieve both at the same time, and it's something that I like to call yes, but. Now, you've probably heard of yes and, where you agree and then build upon someone's statement in order to develop on a joke, like an improv comedy. In an argument, the same principle of finding agreement is very important. The only difference is that you're going to follow your agreement up by showing where you disagree. That's the but part. Now, for instance, in this next clip, Trevor says yes, that he is splitting hairs, but then goes on to say why that's the right thing to do. Take a look.
No. You're splitting hairs here.
No, but that is exactly what we should be doing. Because what you're doing is creating.
I'm not sure I
You're
would.
creating
I'm not
racial
sure
jokes.
I would say.
No, you're creating monoliths.
It may seem subtle, but finding any area of agreement can be critical to moving forward without making enemies. People's egos get tied up in their arguments, and oftentimes when you rebut someone completely, they feel personally attacked, even if your position is perfectly logical. So find a way to validate them by saying yes to something about them or their argument. It can be recognizing the value of one part of what they said.
The first one. I'll give you that. I'll give you that. That was that's pretty. It's nice to hear somebody say that the religion is not the problem. These crazy people.
Or when you think nothing they've said makes sense, simply recognizing that they probably have positive intentions and believe what they're saying can be a really great way to move forward.
Here's my thing. Like all these points that you make are great, and I do believe that you believe them, and I don't believe anyone is actively trying. There are a few people who are trying to be bad from their point of view. But when I look at what you're saying.
Now, in order to do this technique effectively, you need to know specifically where you agree with someone and specifically where you don't. So identifying hidden premises is critical. Hidden premises are unspoken assertions baked into a question or a statement. When someone creates an argument that feels wrong, but you can't quite explain why, sometimes that's because you can't find the hidden premise. And sometimes it's because you're experiencing cognitive dissonance, but we'll leave that for another video to focus on the hidden premise. Here's one quick example. See if you can spot it here.
What do you say to people who say, like, the Daily Show can be an echo chamber?
Did you catch the implied hidden premise? It's that being an echo chamber is a bad thing, something that you shouldn't be. So watch how Trevor responds.
Everything is an echo chamber. I think that's a term that people use to try and justify what a group of people are saying in and amongst themselves. I think for myself, you will always have an echo chamber because people who watch your show are people who like your show.
This is a perfect example of yes, but. In this instance, by saying, yes, the Daily Show is an echo chamber, he's validating Charlemagne, but then saying that it's natural to be so, he roots out that hidden premise that it shouldn't somehow be an echo chamber, and that way he is able to agree but defend himself elegantly. And we discussed this topic further in our Ben Shapiro video if you'd like to play this game a few more times, but for now, let's get to the mindset that ties all of this together, because everything in this video can move from a simple technique to a natural way of being if you adopt new mindsets. And there are 3 keys. First off, in every argument, you are not necessarily right. And this is especially true if you've never amended your belief system, be it political, religious, or otherwise. In those cases, chances are you're operating from conditioning. So genuinely trying to understand other perspectives can help you towards a more accurate view of the world. Now, this is obviously very hard to do because your ego gets involved. So the second key mindset is that adjusting your beliefs, changing your mind in the heat of an argument, does not diminish you at all. As my freshman year philosophy teacher said, the goal of argument is not to be right, it is to get it right. So be proud of yourself when you change your beliefs in accordance with new evidence, even if you technically lost an argument for it to happen. Now, third, if in fact you've taken the time to understand the other person and they're still wrong, it's almost never because they are evil. It's because they are somehow ignorant. Dialogue can help to lift that ignorance, but only if you don't trigger their defense mechanisms by attacking them as people. Now, Trevor summarizes this well on Hot Ones.
You know, I don't want to destroy you. I want to engage with you. And I think a lot of the time as people, if you have ideas you believe in, you should be willing to engage, or you should be willing to test those ideas against somebody that you don't agree with.
If you allow these mindsets to sink in, everything from the sub-communications to asking the Socratic questions to the yes, but technique will come much more naturally as you jointly work with the people you're talking to find solid and true common ground. To be honest, I find that principle of seeking first to understand is very sparse in the modern media. And that's part of why my co-founder Ben and I started a podcast. On it, we discuss things like the news and cultural events, but really the podcast.
All right, we'll stop it there. They're trying to do an advertisement for the other podcasts, but you all hear and get what the video is trying to share. So at this point, I'd like to hear from somebody. Catherine, if you can unmute yourself, I'd like to hear from you on what you have gotten from watching that video. What were some of the insights or what it reminded you of, or anything that was relevant to you and your life?
Yeah. So when all of them are engaging, it brings me back to many years ago when I was in a communications class, and you can tell what type of person that you're having a discussion with, whether they're going to be receptive, whether or not they're going to fight for their cause to the bitter end, be it right or wrong, or anything, any kind of thing that somebody tries to change somebody else's mind. It's almost like a communication thing where you can look at somebody's demeanor. The lady with the black dress on, the blonde-haired lady, was all the way at the edge of her seat, straight up, hunched forward, with her hands clasped in front of her the entire time. And I was always taught, if somebody clasps their hands in front of you or folds their arms, they are not listening to anything that you have to say.
That's a good point.
So you kind of know what you're going to do and whether or not you need to back away from the conversation before it becomes an argument, or just nod your head and say, okay, 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 until they, yeah, some people just like to hear themselves talk.
Yeah, well, that was, it's a very good point, and I like what you said, because their mental or their thoughts of the way they think and their attitude and beliefs is actually demonstrated in their nonverbal communication, which is what I think that you learned from your class, which I think is actually very, very insightful. And you could tell based on what you're saying, watching that video, she's looking there to fight, right? She's ready to make her argument. She thinks she's right. She thinks everybody else is wrong. And what Trevor Noah is trying to do is, how can I diffuse that, right? How can I really try to understand what you're trying to say? Now, here's the thing, like you're saying, is you're sizing somebody up immediately when you're talking to them. And you're trying to say, are they receptive or not? And of course, it's so much easier if you talk to people that are completely open, right? That are willing to engage with you and say, oh, I'm curious, tell me more about that, I don't know that. And you love talking with those type of people, but they are rare, right? Maybe
and the ones that sat back and had their legs crossed and they're just sitting there, they were listening. They had an open mind, they had everything about them. Where there was one that, I believe it was Rand Paul, that sat back, but he completely folded his arms in front of himself. He wasn't going to listen to anything he had to say.
Well, actually, that's the next video that I'm going to show you. It's about having arguments with people who are actually not receptive at all. So I think you're going to enjoy that one. But I just wanted to kind of tie it up with this one about persuasion, because listen, I have a family member, which shall not be named, okay? And this family member has a reputation of being very disagreeable and very argumentative and wants to be right. And there was an incident that happened, and what he was trying to communicate to his partner that he wanted her to do something. And he was alarmed, and he's like, do this. And guess what? She was like, oh, okay. And he was upset because she didn't do what he wanted to do. And at one point, he brought me to the kitchen and basically said, man, I can't believe that. I'm just trying to get her to do X, Y, and Z. I don't know what her problem is. I try to communicate her. She just doesn't listen. Like, do you see how he's so frustrated on this issue because she's not listening to him? And so what do? I use all my kind of techniques. No, I clearly understand exactly what you're saying. And, you just want her to be soft and the way that she communicates, et cetera, right? And he's like, yes. And I'm like, no, I get it. And I was going to drop it, And then he's like, yeah, but I don't understand why. Like, why doesn't she do exactly what I want her to do? Like, oh my goodness, like he's really flummoxed, like he didn't know what to do. And I said, well, you know what? Can I give you my feedback and share my thoughts? Like, do you really want it? And what was so interesting, remember how I said this individual can be very argumentative, wants to be right and stuff like that? It must have been a 4-second pause. Most people would be like, yeah. You could see the wheels processing. Should I really get this feedback? Do I really want to hear this feedback? And then he's like, he didn't even verbalize it. He just nodded. And I said, well, you were trying to communicate this, but she was worried about this. And the way in which you communicated it was she was nervous and got scared. And so that's why she did what she did, is because not because she's not listening to you, it's because she's reacting to this situation. And it's just, you're not, I didn't say that you're not seeing that. I'm like, this is what her fears are. And I would invite you, I didn't tell him what to do. Remember, I'm not a big fan of giving advice. You can give invitations. I said, I'd invite you to basically listen to her, understand her fears and concerns. And once you hear her, then you can actually have a conversation, and then you could actually try to persuade and influence her to what you're really trying to communicate. And he's like, oh, that's a good point. Okay. So what I'm trying to say is that even on the most difficult individuals that you think, man, they're so stubborn, they won't listen. This is what I'm actually taking. This is what this video is all about. And this is why I'm showing you, is because just Jordan Peterson video says the way you view that person, what you think about them will affect how effective you are at communicating with them. I always shared with all of you, I think last time, that Chris Voss, who was the FBI negotiator, he wrote the book Never Split the Difference. He had to get like people who with guns to their heads. How do I convince this person to let these hostages go and release them? And guess what? He wrote this whole book about your mindset in which you actually go in through a negotiation. You have to presume that you can't just say these are evil people and that they need to be destroyed. Otherwise, you can't win the argument. You can't influence them. And so they said, even in the case of a prison, there were prison guards. Whenever some ruckus was happening, the prison guards like, oh, these prisoners, they're going to do, they would get ready with their sticks. And guess what? A fight would break loose. But then the other prisoner guards who would actually have a different intent, that would say, you know what, let's kind of resolve this, that weren't quick to violence. Guess what? Violence wouldn't happen. So how you listen to that person, the way in which you say, let me try to really understand what this point of this person saying without judging them, that's incumbent upon you. And so I remember having a lot of conflicts with this individual that was very stubborn. The moment that I started to just accept him, say, you know what, this person may have some fears and insecurities, whatever it is, Tim, love him, don't judge him. Do you know what started to happen? I let go all of the resentment and anger. And now we're starting to develop a better relationship. And it was not because this person did anything different. It's because I changed. I was going to choose how I was going to be in those different situations with him. We call that in different trainings, your way of being. When you enter an environment, what is your way of being? If you say, I am the possibility of love, right? You're creating love. So you can go into a room, and when you say, I am love, I would describe it to my coaching clients. It's, imagine a mist is coming across from you of love sparkles and love little vapors, and they're invisible. And suddenly you're going to see things happening where it's like, somebody's going to start being loving to you. You're going to be loving to that other person, or two people in the same room are starting to be loving each other. Why? Is because you created that. And so I know that may get a little woo-woo for some people, but I'm telling you, there's evidence, and like that book with Chris Voss is, how you approach the situation will change. And that's why I love tying it back to Trevor Noah is, you know what, if you're trying to convince people, assuming that they're wrong, assuming that they're stubborn, assuming that they're ignorant, you're not going to win, right? It doesn't mean that people won't be stubborn and ignorant and could be wrong, but it's about choosing what you want to do. But if you are to have any success, you're going to have to change the way you are in that situation. So thanks, Catherine, for sharing that feedback. And I think you're going to really enjoy the next video. But before we do, Shania, I see your hand up, and yes, I can see your wonderful face. Yes. So tell us, what you have a question or comment?
I want to make a comment. I just want to say I really appreciate this session, because I'm currently in the process of like trying to better my listening skills as well.
Yeah.
And so I just want to say, you were just speaking so much facts right now. It is just like, from the video, I really I'm looking forward to practicing those tips, because I really do see the value in restating what someone says, because not only does it better my understanding too, it also gives them validation that I'm listening and I know what's going on. And I really do see effect in that. And I've started to realize, like, as this training been going, I've been realizing like how selfish I've been in certain conversations, because I
Spill the
sometimes
tea.
I do
I want to hear it.
yeah.
What was it? This Tea with
See?
Tim. You got to tell what's going on. People can benefit
Yeah,
from
like
sharing.
like just like generally like anytime I have like something going on with like a sister or my mom, and like I'll tell a friend, I'll say, like I'll just say it to get validation of, because like what I'm saying, like okay, I say it to for someone to tell me that I'm making sense, you know. And like so when someone else tells me something, it's just like when they're telling me wrong, I don't hear it. Like I don't want to. I stop them. Like I just be like no, I
You're
don't
like,
hear it. No,
you're
no,
like,
no.
my sister's crazy. She's
Yes.
irresponsible. She's nuts. And your friend's like, wait a minute, your sister might have a point. I don't want to hear. No, she's crazy.
Yes.
Is that what it is? You know?
Yes, but deep down, like I'm like with this train, I'm like when I do hear him out, I'm like, oh, okay, it do make sense. And like, and then when you said, like when you talked about like how like basically we control how we feel, like where we go and stuff like that, and like I totally agree, because I really feel like even though like work could suck, or like, you know, school is stressful, whatever, I have to choose like how I approach it. And I really think that having that approach with that, and like even with people, it really does better in your ability to understand and to like, you know, give them an ear to listen to. So you were speaking facts. And then also one more thing from the training that they said that really that stuck out to me was when he said that it's not about being right, it's about getting it right, or something like that. And I was just like, oh my God, like I really felt that on a deep, because yeah, sometimes I get in my bag when I'm not, you know, right. But when I do see, like, even though like I disagree with my friends, like I do see the value of what they say. I'm like, and then like it makes sense, and you know, I apply it to like what's going on. It's like, yeah, and look, I want to try to, like, you know, I think with that too, it's about not taking things personally, and I feel like I take things personally too. So with that, it's like, yeah, it's not about being right, it's about getting it right. I don't totally agree, and I feel like me changing my approach of like always wanting to be right, it has to be from the other perspective in order to like be right, like to get it right, because that's what's really important. Like, you know, getting it right and having, because during these conversations you learn from other people, and that's how you go educate other people. So it's like that's how you get it right. It's not like, and that's how you can be right, because that's how you get it right. Tim, you the man, Tim. You the man, Tim.
Well, Shania, first of all,
I really enjoyed this. Yeah.
Thank you for the compliments. I really appreciate it. And I appreciate your love and your energy with your emojis and commenting. This engagement is what makes this enjoyable for me, because, you know, I want to share this information. And what you said triggered something in my head. Like again, like the lessons Jordan Peterson says, what are you saying? What is it bringing up in me, so that we can actually have a real, genuine conversation? Is that a lot of these suggestions is keeping your ego out of the conversation, right? So it's like when you have a situation and someone's attacking you, what do you want to do? Put up your shield and start stabbing back. And it's like, how could I actually be, you know, like a Jeet Kune Do and say, I'm not going to let them harm me. You know, you can't, you know, hey, I'm here, let's talk. You know, you can't throw the daggers at me. So this is a very new way of actually communicating with people. And this just applies not only to your interpersonal relationships, meaning like you said, Shania, with your sister, with your mother, but this happens with your job, with your employers, with your managers. You know, if you're in student government and you have a proposal and you want to go talk to the administration, do you think you're going to have an effective conversation with your administration if you already view them as they're old, they don't care about me, they don't care about students? It's like, how effective is that conversation going to really be? I have had students who have used these principles in elective society and got exactly what they wanted from the administration. Why? It's because they actually, for the first time, listen to the administration. They say, so administrator, what you're saying is that you really want us to do this because you're afraid that we're going to get in trouble or it's going to be an issue. Is that correct? Yes. Is there anything else? No. Okay. I understand that you're worried about our safety. Let me ask you, I have a proposal that we could actually do this event or this thing and protect our students. Can I share with you about how we can actually help keep our students safe and do this? Are you open to hearing this idea? Yes, yes, tell me. Because now guess what? You're actually doing what they really wanted. It's a win-win and not a win-lose. It's not adversarial. And so this can happen with some of the most tough, the most rigid people. Like I'm telling you, I've had bosses that if I would have asked every coworker, I said, what do you think of that boss? They would say, she is a bitch, like, and would like insult her, talk all this crap about her. And I could see why her style of communication would be that way. But I would say, listen, she may be acting like that because she's afraid, right? She wants people to do what she wants to do because she wants to control, because she's afraid of what might happen. You guys are so focused on the way and how she's communicating instead of actually really listening to why she's communicating the way she is. So when I communicate with her, I say, listen, this is what you're saying, right? This is what you're worried about. This is what you want, correct? Yes, that's what I want. Thank you, Tim, for finally listening to me. All these other people won't speak up or running away. And I said, okay, I got it. Can I give you a suggestion that I think, she was a dominant. So can I give you a suggestion that I think would help do exactly what you want? She was like, yes, let me hear it. Ba, 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 ba. This is the idea. Great, let's do it. Now it's her idea. It wasn't mine anymore because I ran it by her, and now we made a collective decision, and she's gave her input and her blessing, and now she feels empowered. Now, most people are not doing that, but that's why you are all here, and everybody who's going to watch this recording in Elective Society is, I want to empower all of you with these skills. You don't need to stand outside your administration building or your manager's office and say, these people are evil, we take them down. It's like, okay, have you even started the conversation? Did you even try to understand what their perspective is? Because it's a lot easier to get what you want in a conversation than doing all these other tools, right? And like I said, I'm not poo-pooing all these other tools. I'm just saying, know when to use them, right? And how effective I want you guys to be very effective at persuading and influencing people. So I have one more video to show you, and this one's a good one because it's all about those stubborn people, right? And yes. So without further ado, let me share my screen and let's play this video. Okay, here we go. Now this one, forgive me, in the last video, I didn't put the closed caption because I know people really like the closed caption. Remember, in the post assessment, you could always watch it with closed caption, but this one doesn't have it. But what I'm going to do is in the post assessment, you could actually click if you wanted to read it later. Okay, so here we go. How to argue with someone who won't listen. All right, let's jump in.
It seems to be harder than ever to get through to people logically. In fact, some of the smartest people have the most sophisticated psychological booby traps when it comes to heated subjects. So in this video, we are going to break down why sometimes people won't listen to reason even when they're smart, and what techniques you can do to finally get through to those people so that they see the light. The first thing that you need to realize is that people can fall into a pit that makes them impervious to reasoned argument. What pushes them into that pit is called cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance is the state of having thoughts, actions, beliefs, or desires that are inconsistent with one another. The classic example is someone who smokes, knows that smoking kills, yet says that they want to live a long, healthy life. Their beliefs and their actions don't seem to match up. Now, having one's own cognitive dissonance pointed out is uncomfortable. That's because there's often an unspoken cost to changing certain actions or opinions. In this case, stopping smoking would lead to painful withdrawals. So the most common way that people make cognitive dissonance more bearable is by sneakily changing another thought or action, even if that one makes them irrational. That means that our smoker who can't quit only has irrational paths out of cognitive dissonance. They may point to individuals who smoked without consequence, insist that they have the healthiest genes, or say that they don't care if they die early, even when they really do. The big takeaway is that sometimes, especially in politics, religion, or emotional life choices, the most ridiculous belief that we have is the one that is most difficult to change. That That is why smart people cling to silly positions. It's also why it's critical that you recognize cognitive dissonance if you're ever going to get through to those people. Because the worst thing that you can do in moments where people are deep in a cognitive dissonance shutdown is to continue with logical argument. That will just drive them deeper into irrationality. So here are 7 tells that someone is going into a cognitive dissonance shutdown, and you need to tread carefully. Keep in mind that none of these are perfect indicators. There are times when each tell is entirely reasonable. But if you see several tells, it's likely you're encountering cognitive dissonance. Also, my intent here is not to make fun of the people in these examples, just to learn from them, because we all get caught up in cognitive dissonance from time to time. So the first indicator is being stunned by new information without conceding or adjusting your perspective. Take, for example, Kathy Newman after she had asked Jordan Peterson about why he feels that he has the right to offend people in the pursuit of truth.
You're doing what you should do, which is digging a bit to see what the hell's going on.
So
Exercising your freedom of speech to certainly risk offending me.
But you haven't sat there and I'm just trying to work that out. I mean,
Gotcha.
you have got me. I'm trying to work that through in my head. Yeah. It took a while.
It did.
When someone is stunned, it means that they encountered surprising new information, and to not adjust one's perspective based on that new information can point towards cognitive dissonance. But I repeat that alone is not enough on its own, which is why you should pay attention for number 2, being unable to accurately summarize the other side's perspective. And this is often preceded by, so you're saying.
You're saying that trans activists, but you're saying, right, so you're saying that anyone who believes in equality, so you're saying give people equality of opportunity, that's fine.
We see Ben Affleck do this in his conversation with Sam Harris when Sam is critical of aspects of the doctrine of Islam.
We have been sold this meme of Islamophobia where every criticism of the doctrine of Islam gets conflated with bigotry toward Muslims as people.
Right. You're saying that Islamophobia is not a real thing.
Now, this needs to be contrasted with summarizing the other side's perspective in a way that genuinely attempts to portray them in their own words. This is to be encouraged, and you can see Jon Stewart do it here with Bill O'Reilly.
Let me go to a different point, if I may. It sounds like what you're saying is, and correct me if I'm wrong, and I don't want to be wrong when I'm with you, because you know I got mad love for you. That's a rap phrase.
I got it.
All right.
The third tell is mind reading the other side's intent, especially when the intent is presumed to be nefarious. Ben Shapiro made this mistake in his conversation with Andrew Neil, assuming that Andrew must be on the left because he asked him pointed questions. Ben continued to disbelieve Andrew even when Andrew had indicated that Ben had misread his intent.
You as a journalist are proceeding to call one side of the political aisle ignorant, barbaric, and sending us back to the dark ages. Why don't you just say that you're on the left? Is this so hard for you? Why can't you just be honest?
Mr.
Seriously,
Shapiro,
it's a serious question.
Mr. Shapiro, if you only knew how ridiculous that statement is, you wouldn't have said it. So let's move on. Would you vote
I
for
think
Mr.
it's pretty
Trump?
evident from your own questions exactly what you are, sir.
Trump?
The fourth tell is regularly moving goalposts. It's of course okay to clarify your position, but if you notice that someone is regularly adjusting the criteria by which they judge an argument, you're likely witnessing cognitive dissonance. For context, in this next clip, Stewart and O'Reilly are arguing whether it reflects poorly that Barack Obama had Common to the White House, given that Common has defended someone accused of killing a police officer. Jon Stewart points out that Springsteen, Bono, and Bob Dylan also did the same thing, and we get this exchange.
Oh, wait, let me reply. Okay, so you say that because Bono, Springsteen, and Bob Dylan wrote songs defending people who were accused of heinous things, that I have to give Common a pass because he did the same thing.
You have to be consistent with your outrage.
Let me give you,
be consistent.
I will. Common visited, went to see.
The fifth tell is yelling or getting angry, especially self-righteous anger. And you just saw it with Bill O'Reilly a bit, but here's another example from Ben Affleck and Sam Harris. For context, while Ben does make good points that most Muslims are good human beings, he's not responding to Sam's criticisms at all. You can hear Sam try to explain his actual position, but he can't get through because of the yelling.
How about there's more than a billion people who aren't fanatical, who don't punch women, who just want to go to the store?
Wait a second. Wait a second.
Don't do any of the things that you're saying. All Muslims. Wait a second. Wait a second.
And you're painting the whole group religion with that.
No, let's.
The sixth tell of cognitive dissonance is attacking someone's character instead of addressing their arguments. And it's often a sign in light of a losing argument. This is a last resort.
Who you are in terms of your group identity.
You're just
That's
saying
murderous.
things though to provoke, aren't you? I mean,
Not
you
a
are a
bit.
provocateur.
I never said
You're like
anything.
the alt-right that you hate to be compared to. You want to stir things up.
And 7 is retreating from a point without any concession. This is the least of the giveaway since there's often good reasons to move on in an argument, but it should be noted nonetheless, especially if someone retreats rather hastily to move along.
For
You don't
humor,
set out to
now and
provoke.
then. I'm not interested in provoking.
But what
Not in
about the thing
least.
about, fighting and the lobster? Tell us about the lobster.
Well, that's quite a segue.
If you see 2, 3, or more of these signs, stop debating. Stop with logical arguments because they will not get you anywhere. You are in the midst of dangerous cognitive dissonance. Instead, your first order of business should be to re-establish rapport with the person you're communicating with. We've covered this at length in our videos on Crowder and Trevor Noah, which I'll link to for a thorough breakdown of rapport. But for the fastest effect, mid-conversation, crack a joke that does not insult the other side, like this.
This is kind of fun, though, is it not?
It's
And my frustration is not with you. Again, it's watching the entire system.
I know. You
in
loathe
action.
the network, but you kind of loathe me a little less. I got it.
No, I don't even loathe
Let's
you.
talk politics.
I actually enjoy your company. I feel like we should get together outside of this weirdly egg-shaped table.
Good-natured jokes are especially effective because cognitive dissonance is like a shell that prevents new information from coming in. As long as you are perceived as a threat, the other person's shell will stay up. But if you signal that you're not a threat by making someone laugh, they will feel safe enough to finally open back up. Once the other side has opened back up, you're going to have to employ 3 counterintuitive mindsets to finally get them to listen. First, demonstrate no superiority if they switch to your side. When you rub winning an argument in people's faces, they will slip back into cognitive dissonance. If your aim is to change someone's mind, you need to resist the urge to do things like this.
You talk a lot about the Pareto distribution, yes?
That doesn't mean I defend it.
Well, okay.
No, not well, okay.
Yes.
Second, do not force people to immediately live out their new values. Our hypothetical smoker is going to have a really hard time conceding that smoking is ruining their health if they're forced to quit cold turkey in that same breath. So you need to allow people space to separate honesty from integrity. Third, do not hold past inconsistencies against people. People have a strong desire to defend things that they've said and done in the past. So when you bring up those inconsistencies, it can drive them to abandon the new belief that they're trying out just so that they can remain consistent with their past selves. But all of this stuff is worth only so much if you use it just with conversation with others, because the most dangerous cognitive dissonance you will ever encounter is your own. Your cognitive dissonance is what makes you the smart person with some dumb opinions, and we all have some. Now, admittedly, spotting cognitive dissonance in yourself is harder, though the 7 tells can tip you off if you have super high self-awareness. And the solution of allowing yourself to crack a joke, forgive your past inconsistencies, will help you move through cognitive dissonance gracefully. But there is one more piece that helps the most with your own person, and that's when you feel yourself losing track of an argument, you start to raise your voice, or you just get the sense that you're trying to win instead of learn or communicate, connect with your body. Literally, look downward into your chest, placing a hand on your heart or belly, and take a deep breath. Cognitive dissonance often feels like panic if you tune into it, which is why people enter fight or flight in those arguments. But when you slow down and you pay attention, you'll find that you're actually just having a discussion and exploring a perspective that may be more in line with reality, and your sense of logic will start to come back to you. Now, if you can do this in real time, you won't just be part of the solution to communication breakdowns, which is amazing in and of itself. You will see things that other people cannot see. You'll take your ego blinders off and be better prepared to succeed in politics, relationships, work, or life. If you don't do this, you'll find yourself in a near perpetual state of shock and outrage when the world doesn't match your predefined expectations. And worse, you'll be poorly equipped to do anything to improve it. Thanks to our sponsor for this video, Audible.
All right. So again, a lot to pack in there. I hope you found that very helpful. I'd like to hear some 2 more quick thoughts before we just wrap up here on people who haven't had a chance. Elizabeth, I don't know if you're in ability to unmute your microphone. Can you unmute it and share what you've got out of that last video? I'd love to get your feedback and input. And then Dominique, go ahead.
I think cognitive dissonance, however you pronounce it, I'm sometimes really bad with words, is one of the harder things to get through, especially when you're like I feel like with advocacy, if you're an advocate, it's very, very hard to move the needle when you're so impassioned and just like you're in that moment and you're like, but this needs to be done. And you're not going to budge from what needs to be done, even though there's no, I wouldn't say there's no solution, but the solution that's logical is not the solution that works in politics.
Well, do you have an actual example that you could illustrate? Because here's what I'm hearing from you is that cognitive dissonance is a challenge because, notice I'm using the principles from the listening communication. It's a challenge because you could be very passionate about an issue. And so it's like, I need passionate, I need to be forceful. How do I make activism and change if I'm going to quiet my thoughts and just allow people to, share information? Is that accurate based on what I'm saying, Elizabeth? Do I am hearing you, or what am I missing?
So for instance, like right now in New York State, like, and I'm sure it's all across the nation, there's a severe provider shortage for early intervention.
Okay.
Logically, raise the reimbursement rates because it's set through the state and the money comes from the federal government in order to increase recruitment and retention. It's a very logical approach. Yep. However, knowing the problem and communicating the problem doesn't justify that. Yeah, we understand that it's a problem, but we're not going to budge. And that's what advocates continuously encounter is that, who they're, trying to advocate for change against isn't always responsive to the need. Mm-hmm. And so we recognize that it's a problem, but that's not a solution we can take.
Okay. So here's what I'm hearing from what you're saying is that the early childhood intervention needs to happen. It needs more funding, but the either the local government has not or the federal government has not been funding it. So it's almost like you keep running into the same wall. So you're frustrated. Is that clear? Am I getting it accurate?
Yeah, that's 100% clear and where advocates are. I mean, I had to step back from advocacy for a job that I took. So I'm not really like in a position to lobby, but I still see the people that, I know in the field doing the work. Okay. And they're extremely frustrated because nothing's moving no matter how many voices they scream louder with, if that makes any sense.
No, I understand exactly what you're saying. So I'm going to answer the question on my suggestions based on it, but this is a topic of lobbying and persuasion. I have a specific training in level 2 after we complete this, 9-week training program that I go into deep dive into lobbying and persuading. But I will answer your question and relate it back to this. Now, in the end, there are a group of advocates that feel very strongly about this issue. They see a problem and they see a solution. And so they're trying to persuade and influence legislators to actually do X, Y, and Z. They have not been effective. So I really get it that it's very, very frustrating. Now, with the whole presentation of what we're talking about here is about listening, communication, persuasion, and influence. Now, what I would want to know, again, I would want to know is, are the advocates so passionate about this issue that they are not humbling themselves to say, I need to understand this legislator. What are their worries or concerns? What is actually going on with them? Why would they not want to support this or give this funding? Because they need to basically find that information without yelling in anger. Now, emotion is a very powerful, strong thing, right? Without emotion, nothing gets done. What this thing is about, really about persuading and influence. But as soon as you yell, as soon as you start yelling at somebody, it's like, guess what? They're going to shut down. So the advocates sometimes, even though they're so passionate, could repel people from joining their argument or their side because they're so passionate that they're being, it's almost blinding. I think this video was really also talking about, can you keep your ego in check? Could you be wrong, but could you also be committed to this issue? And so let me just paint this picture. And again, I wish we had a lot more time, Elizabeth, to go into this, but what I would say is this. I would want to know what the legislator thinks. What are their arguments? What do people against this idea say? So I need to know both sides and fully flesh it out. Then I want to be able to communicate with that legislator. Does he understand the issues? What does he or she think? What is possible? Now, if I'm really committed to this issue and there's all these objections, we can't get the funding, now is not the time. If I'm really committed to the issue, I might want to find out, well, what are the other solutions that we can get and do to help do this? Hey, politician, legislator, do you know of any companies? Can you give us access to your network? Can we get funding from corporate sponsors or things like this that can actually help us, because we're on a mission to really help these children, you know, in this early intervention. And guess what? You're so committed and clear with your vision, and you're not overtaken by your emotions, that you're now open and receptive to whatever can happen. Is that helpful, Elizabeth?
No, that is, and that's one of the things that I did explain to a couple of my friends who are still working and now they can see, is that sometimes you have to listen to the opposition's argument.
Yep.
To reformulate your strategy.
Yep. And it will only strengthen your argument if you can actually listen to them, that say, let's not demonize the politicians as idiots, dumb, you know, lazy, no spineless. You know, if you're going in there with that you're going to bash them over the head, I can tell you it's not effective. Now, that still may be true. They may not have the courage that you have to do this, but what is your ultimate goal? Is it your ultimate goal? Like, we go back to what Shania was saying in the videos we're saying, are you trying to be right, or are you trying to get it right? Now, getting it right would be working with that politician or person to say, do you agree that this is an issue, that this is a problem, that we need to do something? Yes, I do agree. How can you help us? What can we do? Right? You know, and then it's much more collaborative, that, you know, help me. How can I help you? Hey, can you get me signatures? Can we throw an event, because there's more peer pressure, there's more letter campaign and things like that. Hey, can you help us host? Can you be a guest speaker? Like, once you create that as like, I'm so committed to this thing, then the possibilities are endless of what you can do. But if you're just all emotion, anger, frustration, anger, guess what? You're just going to get more of that, right? Oh, we need to do this. And then you're turned off and like, no, now I'm mad at them because they're not giving us what they want. So, you know, absolutely. So thanks so much for sharing that feedback, Elizabeth. I think it does really tire. And really quick, because I know, forgive me, I'm a little bit over in the time. Dominique, is there any other final comments that you want to share before about that video, or what you learned so far, before I close this out?
No, I think you said everything.
Thanks, Dominique. I really appreciate it. All right, so let me share my screen. This is the next training. It's going to be a much more formal training, where it's going to be about the biggest challenge leaders face and mastering success habits. I think this is in the invitation. I actually sent the sample of what this training was about. I think I sent like 40 minutes of the sample of the training. I'm telling you right now that the issues that we're going to be talking about is not only for leaders, for you, all of you who are in college, graduating, whatever it may be, but I'm telling you, these are the challenges that people in CEOs, different companies, you know, managers, employees, they all have these same challenges. And so what I also want to do is at the end of the presentation is, if you want to succeed, these are the certain habits that you need to implement, and that in order to be successful. And some of them may be familiar, others may not be, but I really want to empower each of you to do that. So I look forward to sharing that. At this point, because we don't have any other time, if you have any other questions, feel free to email me. But at this point, I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to send the link again. Here it is, to fill out the form. Now, remember, I just want to give you guys a heads up. It's this Google form is going to ask you what you thought about this training, but then I actually provide summaries of what they covered in those videos. And then there's some action steps of what you can do. It's like, how can you implement this with a friend, family member, somebody that you may be having some conflict with? And so it's going to ask you some of those questions of, who can you practice these new things, these new concepts that you just learned. So it'll take you some time. If you don't have time to do it right now, please do it tonight, tomorrow. But I think it's going to be really helpful for you. So thank you so much for staying this long, a little extra 10 minutes, but I think this was a great discussion. I appreciated all your feedback. Have a great night. Have a great weekend. And I will see you next Thursday and talk to you soon. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks, Tim.
Bye, Shania. Great talking with you.
Great talking to you.